begin the meeting. We're gonna at 6 o'clock. We do have quorum with 4 out of 5 members currently present. Adjustment to the agenda. There are no adjustments to the agenda other than I provided some additional backup that will be discussed at our next meeting because it was not on the agenda. So the first order of business is to elect a committee chair. Just for purposes of this, this committee is a little different than straight negotiations in the past. It will cover a greater breadth of work to support the work of the board. And the negotiations committee was never a public open meeting, but this one will have components of public meeting, properly noticed, and executive sessions properly noticed by statute. Just because of the function of the work. So election of committee chair. Do I have any nominations for chair of the?
Wouldn't it technically have to be Jody when it comes to when we
No.
actually have negotiation
It
meetings?
doesn't have to.
No, not
Take
Wow,
policy.
It's always been the
Typically,
chair that runs it.
Going to policy, it doesn't have to be chair, it could be anybody, but in past years, when it was just negotiations, it was always the chair.
Right.
and I'm fine with whatever. What if you want to do it, you can.
Do you understand what's happening, Amy?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because
Do you want to be?
No.
I was just gonna say, Amy.
I was like, I'm the newbie, so I'm like, it's like everyone else has been there longer than me on this one.
so do I
I've been on
have,
Just reading through
negotiations
this,
from the get-go.
I was like,
You've
oh
been on
gosh, I hope
negotiations
they
from
don't
the
put me in
get-go?
charge. Earlier.
so do I have a motion for nomination of chair of the Human Resources Committee?
I nominate Jody.
Is there a second?
Second,
Are there any other nominations?
why confuse it? Why should
Seeing-
we?
I have to ask that. Seeing
If
none,
you don't want it, I'll do it, but you're
I don't
nominated.
It's fine.
Don't matter to me.
okay, all those in favor?
Opposed?
3 with 1 abstention, okay. So
No, vote for yourself.
Jody is now the chair of the Human Resources Committee.
Well, thanks, everyone. All right, so we'll move on next up to a review of policy BBAB. This is the school board self-evaluation. This policy has been in place for a long time, and I'm glad that we now have a committee to ensure that it is implemented and followed. So according to policy, as per policy, the school board needs to conduct a self-evaluation annually. And that would be a meeting where no other business is discussed. So we would need to develop a process for that, for our self-evaluation. We can certainly look at future meetings at what kind of process we want to do. I can come back in October with some examples of what other school boards do for self-evaluation, so that we can figure out what we want to do with that process, kind of figure out a timeline. We can put that on the agenda for the October meeting. But the main reason I wanted to bring this to this committee tonight is that part of this policy also discusses school board, let me find it. School board goals. Can't find it. I know that it's here, that's why I put it on.
Well, after M, it kind of talks about established priorities and objectives.
Yeah.
Following years.
I know it's there somewhere. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about setting some goals for the school board this year, kind of in brainstorming. Obviously, we do have a strategic plan that's coming up for approval, so we want any goals that we set to be in alignment with our strategic plan. I think one of the goals of the school board, and specifically this committee, that I would recommend is to review, refine, and then administer the superintendent evaluation. I would probably suggest that we put that on next month's agenda as well, to bring forward, like the form that was used last year, and then to have a discussion of, is this what we want to do again this year? Timeline, do we want to use something different? Do we want to make our own? And a timeline for that, and exactly how we want to administer it so that we're not scrambling at the end of the year to issue a review. And in discussion about superintendent evaluation, this is a public meeting. So we would be discussing just the process of a superintendent evaluation while we're here in committee. And then when the time comes to actually discuss our superintendent's evaluation, that's when we would go into executive session, because that would be discussed as a personnel matter. So another, goal for the school board that I was thinking about, and specifically, it all kind of revolves around this committee, but it would all go through the full board, because the work of this committee, 99% of it is going to be brand new. So a lot of it will have to be brought to the school board, is a review and potential revision of the school board scholarship application. So I'm gonna put that on next month's agenda as well. I had Allison Ellis send me a copy of the current one, which is just a very generic application. And in reviewing those last year, I found that the information that was provided on the application didn't really allow me to select who I thought the school board would recommend to receive our scholarship. Because I think that it should be geared towards a student that's going into education or public service or something along those lines. And the information, it just asks for an essay about your experience at Massabesic. So that's kind of what I have been thinking in the last several months since we made the decision to change this committee over to encompass more than just negotiations. So I would certainly open discussion to any other ideas, and then we can kind of come back in October to really set our goals, so that when we report out in October to the full board, we can say, these are the committee's goals and get their approval. Obviously, those would need to be approved by the
Now,
full
are
board.
we going to review the scholarships, or is that still just gonna be just you?
No, it could be, I anticipate that it would be this committee.
Yeah, that's
Last
what I
year it was
thinking.
just me, because I don't even know if previous board chairs had even reviewed the scholarship applications. I think
I don't.
No, it
think-
went to the
I don't think that they had
Ours went to
either.
the senior.
Right, and then I
Yeah.
think the scholarship committee at the high school was reviewing the applications and choosing that other applicant. So last year I said, well, it's
Our
the
money.
school board scholarship, so the school board should be somewhat involved in choosing it. But then as I started to read through the applications, I was like, I can't even bring this to the board for hey, who do you guys think? Because it really was
Didn't years past, I mean, I'm talking my first few years of the board, we would get a couple students, it would be student A, student B, student C. We wouldn't know who the student was, and we would review it as an entire board
And we would
discuss
decide
it.
how much.
We
we
would
get.
decide.
I think
would
that
do
that
too.
was, right, I
Obviously,
do
the school
think.
rep would get one, but obviously, as well as whatever else.
Yep, and I think that you're right in that, like the scholarship committee would narrow it down to like a final 5 or
Right,
something. So what we could do is if we take and revise the application to say like, as the school board, with the money that is, deducted from stipends to go towards this scholarship fund, what kind of student are we looking for to award a scholarship to? And from there, what information do we need from the students to be able to determine that? This committee could probably do what the scholarship committee was doing, which is go through all of them, come up with the finalists, and then from there move them to the full board. I really think that it should be a full board decision as
it
to.
used to
It
be.
used to
Right.
be. I don't know
I
why it
remember.
changed.
I wanna say that that's when Carla was chair, maybe? That was right when I started. She was chair
Yeah,
maybe
she
the
was,
first and second year.
She wasn't on the board when I started, when we were
Oh,
doing
so
it.
it was Bruce when.
So it was Bruce, I believe.
Yeah, I don't remember when we stopped, but I remember
Yeah.
just being
It
like.
just
it
stopped
hasn't
happening.
happened since I've been here.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying, it's
It happened
It
a
happened a
lot.
couple years before you
It
came.
used to happen, it used to be brought similar to what Anastasia was saying, there'd be an A, B, C, D
Right.
nondescript person. There'd be an evaluation and then the board would make a decision on the typically two scholarships that they were gonna award for that year.
So we can look to do that this year, and then if you, Colin, if you can bring back to next month's meeting the total amount in the fund. Just because I don't think, I know that used to be kind of a yearly report as well from the board chair of our scholarship fund currently has X dollars in it, and then we were awarding scholarships. It wasn't a fixed amount every year because it was based on how
Right.
much money was available.
Right.
So when we can kind of finalize goals and then present them to the board in October, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants with this committee right now. We're figuring out exactly how it works and what we're gonna do, but I think that would be a good start if we do, you know, superintendent evaluation, school board scholarship, There will-
Student rep.
also in the spring, when student rep applications come in,
Not like
this
we have
committee,
that Either.
yep, this committee could certainly be reviewing the applications for that. The last 2 years, I've sat with the high school principal and Mrs. Ellis to interview student rep applications. I think you sat in on 1 year too, the first
on
year,
the
because we
year
had to
Hunter.
get 2. Because we were replacing, we had to get a senior and a junior rep, so we had a bunch of applicants. And then last year, it was a smaller pool, so it was just Ty and Allison and myself that did those interviews and selected it. But that's certainly something that should go on this committee's plate. It was the whole reason that I had asked the board to approve the change to this committee was there was a lot of things that came up last year that I felt like I shouldn't be making this decision on my own. I shouldn't be doing this work on my own, not because I didn't want to and not because I couldn't, but because it's a board, I think it should be a board decision, and there was a lot of work that didn't fall into a specific committee, which was the reason
Maybe
for
that
the
can
change to
be-
this one.
Part of the goal with the rep is figuring out how we can get more interest from students.
Yep,
You know, maybe we can encourage anybody who's interested to come and watch, you
Right.
know, our student reps. And see what they
Absolutely.
do and-
One thing that you might wanna consider, and I'd have to look at the policy and how it's set up. I think typically, high school administration will help support the solicitation of getting kids to show interest. And then it's actually just the board or a subcommittee of the board that selects the student. So that way it's kind of a separation. So it's not the high school administration that chooses.
Mhm.
It's actually the board who chooses.
right,
Well, and it should be that way.
Yeah.
right.
That's what I
Shouldn't
would,
be
that's what I would recommend is that it
doing
be
it.
fully you
It's
all
not
and not
their
the
reps.
high school.
Yep,
But we'd have to look at the policy. I don't have it.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
because of course, there's policy to do in the school board. So I think that this committee, we're gonna find that this year especially, there's gonna be a lot of work to be done in this committee because of things that need refinement and need review. So I think we'll be busy and it will be good. So that's kind of the quick review of policy BBAB. So I figured tonight if we talk a little bit about it, threw some ideas out there, and then when we come back in October, we can really say like, okay, these are the goals that we're gonna recommend to the full board for this year. These are how we're gonna, cause obviously we don't wanna just say like, we're going to review the superintendent evaluation. We wanna be able to go to the board with, this is our goal, a timeline, how it will be done, just so that, we make sure that at the end of the year, when we do a school board evaluation, we actually have a measurable way to say we met our goals.
But as like the board chair, is that something that you should ask the whole board for their thoughts?
Yep, and
then we can kind of like.
Yep. I can do that at next week's meeting during my board chair report, or during the report out on this committee. I can ask for ideas from the board.
Maybe they can just email
Yep,
you.
just send an
singly,
idea.
And then you can tell us their thoughts.
Yep, and then we can bring them back. That sounds good. I'm going to the student rep. So in April, the notice is posted with an announcement. Selection committee reviews the this is the student rep. Selection committee reviews the applications, determines the interview schedule. The selection committee may be made up of high school principal, 2 school board members, student council president, current student reps, director of guidance. Ultimately, the school board chair will approve the selections, and then interviews will be conducted, representatives will be selected. Selection should be made by the last meeting in May, so it doesn't even specify who makes the selection. It's just that interviews will be conducted and representative or representatives will be selected.
So basically,
Yeah, that's just.
that
seems weird
principal
to me.
guidance to board members is what you said?
It's may be made up of, so
Okay,
it doesn't
okay.
have to involve, but principal, board members,
say-
student council president, current rep, and director of guidance. So last year, it was just principal, director of guide, well, we actually should review this and change it because we should have it say the dean of academics. Cause that's our practice. So principal, board members, so yeah, last year it was just principal, myself, dean of academics. The year before, principal, dean of academics, 2 board members, Jen and myself.
Okay.
And
Is
then
that something that has to go to policy to be redone?
it would just need a review in policy just to change the wording. It would need to come back.
Council one.
Yeah,
I could see maybe this,
well,
like
it just
senior
says it
student
may
rep.
be made
I know,
up of.
but I could see like the
I would
senior
s-
student
yeah, I
rep,
would
but
say
not
the
the
senior
student
student
council.
rep, not student council.
Yeah,
Because the student rep has been here, they know
Right, they actually know about it.
about it, and if that candidate or candidates have questions, they are the most.
yeah. Yeah, but that one can go back to policy next month just for a quick
Yeah.
revision. It doesn't even need to go before the full board. It's like the ones where we're changing, where it says,
So the,
like Colin's current title. It had like the old title and now we're changing it just to make sure that it says, director of
think Fubak.
right. And then there's another policy regarding the actual like duties of the student. All right, anything else on BBAB? Okay, next up is a review of the current ed tech agreement and MOU. So this year, our negotiations run in a 3-year cycle. We do teachers, admin and ed tech, so the ed techs are up this year. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone had a copy of the current contract. There's also a memorandum of understanding that goes along with that, so that everyone has a nice, good opportunity to be able to review it. You have a paper copy, you can write on it so that everyone is familiar with the ed tech agreement before we start negotiations. So, did you wanna?
I just passed out the memorandum of understanding
Oh,
that
thank
was
you.
changed. And it wasn't in my booklet.
Oh, it's in mine. Is it in yours?
Yeah, it's in the back,
Yeah, it's like way,
in the very back.
yeah, it's like the last 2.
Oh, you know what? The reason I was thrown off
yeah.
was the salary structure
Oh, yeah.
is incorrect in the,
In the book?
let me just check everything real quick. Yeah, I guess it's right. I was thinking it was wrong. So now you have 2 copies of the memorandum of understanding.
We'll have it all memorized.
We got
So we have a
plates.
lot of understanding.
So yeah, so we really can't discuss any particulars about it, but it's pretty straightforward. The negotiation process, so they'll be sending forward a formal request to negotiate. And then you set a timeline for that, an initial meeting to talk about kind of the status, what the expectations are, kind of ground rule setting. And then really a hope of completing it in this designated time period. Similar to what you guys did last year, but you're new, Amy, so, and it really is, I think it can be a very, very good process. There'll be a number of state law changes that will impact, you probably heard some of them yesterday, or today. So the
Last
Maine
week.
legislature, had 2002 new laws or resolutions. And, some of those are still taking, a little time to digest. I put two, they're not on the agenda, so we really can't talk about them at length or anything right now. Because we didn't properly notice it, but I can give you a little heads up about it, but we should probably talk about it. It looks like the October 17th meeting is gonna be pretty loaded already. So maybe these two additional documents that I shared with you would be part of the November meeting. One is dealing with, that has an impact on bargaining, and it relates to the zipper clause. What a zipper clause essentially says is, if you talked about it, you don't necessarily need to open up the contract. Once you have an agreement, kind of zips it shut. But the new laws make some changes to that. So if it's, it opened up a little bit more opportunity for subjective bargaining. The second one, I think, is going to have a little larger impact. It can have an impact on both negotiations, but it certainly will have another, maybe a more significant impact on budget development, and that relates to paid family medical leave and provisions set forth. I will dig a little deeper into the law. I have a few notes on the side here that you won't understand until I explain it at a subsequent meeting. But the law itself is 383 pages long. And there's still some significant things to work out, but it will have an impact financially on employees and taxpayers in the form of a combined 1% set aside for leave compensation for qualifying individuals. And they really expand eligibility for family medical leave at a very, very high level, to the point where it even goes so far as to say, or a close friend, I think. I mean, it really, it's gonna be hard to manage, perhaps. I think it's gonna have some, I don't know, we'll see. But I'll be able to explain it far more in depth at November, I would suggest.
Okay.
But I at least wanted to put it on your radar because they have budget impacts and negotiation impacts.
That gives us an opportunity to review it. So I would suggest over the next month or so, that you review the ed tech contract, the memorandum of understanding, and that way when we come back in October, if there are any questions about just general information in the contract, because we can discuss the current contract, that's public information. And then we can kind of figure out a timeline for negotiations or an anticipated timeline on that. But I wanted to make sure that everyone had it well in advance so that they were familiar with it before we began negotiations. All right, so future meeting topics. This is probably gonna be kind of our longest on what we wanna tack on. First of all, the next meeting is October 19th. It's not the 17th. Anyway, so in October, if we want to really determine our goals for the year, we can review the scholarship application at that time, because Allison says that they would need it back by the end of December. So if we review it in October, then if needed, we still have a little time to make any changes. I'll bring copies of the superintendent evaluation that we used last year, so that we can start talking about that process. Colin will bring us numbers on the funds for the scholarship. and we could probably start talking about laws, but we'll push that to November. Right? Anything else in October? Did I say anything else before? I don't think so. I think that'll keep us pretty busy.
Review the school board,
Well, the student rep
that's-
application.
student rep
Yeah.
app.
So the student rep application doesn't need to be, I think that that's fine the way, that's actually a policy. The student rep application is actually a policy.
I thought you wanted to broaden it.
No, the scholarship.
Oh,
The scholarship application is the one that,
It's kind of
Does-
just vague.
it's just, I have it somewhere. Yeah, it's just like name, obviously their information, colleges they've applied to and been accepted. And then indicate which one they're attending. And then it says with your application, please include a letter of recommendation from the guidance department, a 500-word essay that highlights your experience at Massabesic High School and what you've gained from them, and a list of extracurricular activities, community and civic activities, work experiences, and contributions to Massabesic High School and the community. I think it's that essay part that we need to think about. If we want them to write an essay, what do we want to know about a student?
What their goals are, what do they plan for their future?
Right.
That would be, my opinion, a top thing to know.
Right, and they're, I think more than highlighting experience, more about what have they been involved in. Not just a list of their activities, but what they've been involved in both in and out of school while they've been here. So, but that's the one that I really, so the actual student rep application, that's a policy. That would have to go through policy if we want to change it.
So for student reps to apply, they just put their name in a hat, so to speak.
Student representative application is pretty extensive, so they have to provide a written response to the question, why are you interested in serving on the school board, and how do you think your membership will benefit students attending Massabesic High School? And then you need a peer reference letter, a faculty or administration reference letter, one community member reference letter. Those all go with the application. And then there's, I understand that you're a non-voting member. I understand that the meetings are held at this time and this time. I understand that my term begins here, what the role is. So it's kind of all the things that you need to know to be a student rep, and then you sign off on that. Your parent or guardian has to sign off on that. So it's pretty extensive with the 3 letters of recommendation that are required along with their answer to why they want to be on the school board. So that's pretty extensive, yeah.
Can I throw in a thing about the scholarship?
Sure.
And I hope this doesn't come off wrong, or wrong from what I would intend. But I think sometimes with the scholarships, there's almost an over focus on needs-based that actually hurts. Because of the way financial aid works, there are kids that get loads and loads of financial aid. I can tell you that I know of kids that are paying far, far less, like immeasurably less than what my kids pay. And then they received a bunch of scholarships that were need-based, which made it even, so it's almost like I would encourage the board not to always base it solely on economic need, because there's so much financial aid and merit aid from schools. The playing field is so crazy.
I don't feel like we have,
Yeah,
No, but I just want to caution, because
right.
it really,
because we don't typically know who the student is when we actually vote on it.
okay.
Right.
It was always, in the past, it was student A with a
Right.
brief info of what they've done, what they've succeeded, where they're looking to go
Yeah.
to school, what they're gonna study.
Right.
Through student A to D or E or however many we did, we didn't know exactly who they were.
Right.
I mean, if you thought the process was hard enough, you could probably figure it out, but
Right.
with
Yeah, and what I
it's
did
nice.
last year, what I did with them last year is I took all of and there was a lot. There was, if I had to guess, there was probably 50 applications. And I went through them real quick and kind of set aside any that didn't have all the requirements. They didn't have the, they were missing the recommendation letter or they were missing whatever. And I kind of set those to the side and then I went through and read everybody's essay and started to set aside like, this one sounds really good, this one, just kind of based on feel. And then I gave them all back to the scholarship committee with this pile, I would be fine with any of these. This pile are also good, but I lean towards this pile and I let the scholarship committee like go from there because they're the scholarship committee, but it really like in hindsight, that's not the way that it should be done. It should be done the way that we're discussing here tonight. So,
I
and
mean, I'm
that's the
all
way
for
that we'll do
scholarship
it.
committee helping, but
Right.
this is a scholarship from the board. That
Right.
we've all put money into it. It's not
Right.
money
Right.
that the taxpayers have put in.
Right.
This is money that we have taken from our stipend, or
Right.
gave our stipend, or whatever.
And also the school board scholarship. Can't even believe I'm saying these words out loud. I'm gonna say them. The school board scholarship, I really feel should not be a scholarship that's just announced by an administrator at graduation. It makes me want to throw. It should be announced by the school board chair at the senior awards night. So that those people that are awarded the school board scholarship receive it from a member of the school board.
Yeah, it's not
Um,
just stand up, sit down.
Right, right. We have a lot of scholarships that are given on senior awards night and the school board scholarship should certainly be one of them. So, not that I like to get up in front of a room full of people, because I don't. But I felt that last year
If you wanna
because,
do it, I'll do it. I have no problem.
because last year, I didn't know who was getting the other school board scholarship until graduation.
Oh.
And I didn't like the way that I felt about that either.
Yeah.
That it's our scholarship. And I knew that the senior rep was getting
Right.
it. But the other one I didn't know until it was announced.
Well, and who decided
don't
the
know-
money either?
Right.
But even, not just the school scholarships, other scholarships, I was shocked to see how many Trey got 2 years ago, a year
Yeah.
ago. Graduated 22.
Whenever that was, yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that can be improved on this year, and that's what this committee, I think, will do and do a good job of. So, all right, October goals, scholarship application, superintendent evaluation, we'll start working on the process for that. November, we can look at law changes in regards to negotiations and bargaining negotiations. That will probably be a pretty extensive conversation. If we think of anything else to add in November. certainly
Yeah,
can.
because we'll have more updates from the main school management meeting in October. That could help with that November law stuff. And then also the ASBO, which is gonna talk a lot about negotiations in early November, right? November 4th.
Early November, yeah.
So then whatever it is, November 18th or whatever, I don't know.
November 16th. Yep.
That one will have a little more information about the implications of law changes that,
Yep.
great.
Yeah, and then we do have a meeting on the books for December 21st. That's a crazy time of year. We can always make adjustments if needed. January, we have a meeting. The meeting in February actually did not fall during February vacation, which was nice. March. April is the one, the third Thursday does fall during April vacation. So as that date gets closer, I don't think we're going to be able to skip the April meeting because that's gonna be, wrapping up negotiations potentially, superintendent evaluation, student rep applications go out then, scholarship.
Maybe?
Yeah, so we'll have to, as that date gets closer, maybe come up with a date that this committee can meet. And there may be additional meetings that we need to add once negotiations get going, based on what else we have on the agenda.
So Amy, typically for negotiations, at least the last 2 cycles that we've had, there were like 2 meetings a month roughly. I would recommend that this committee would still meet at 6 o'clock and negotiations might be at 7 or 6:45 or something like
Yeah.
that. That way you get, because you have to do other business other than negotiate.
Right.
So, so there'd be the regular business and then executive
right.
session of.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be executive session, it would just be negotiations.
Yeah, we could adjourn this meeting.
Yeah.
And then go into negotiations. So we
So
could,
negotiations
could
is
discuss-
confidential until it's done.
right,
Correct.
so we could discuss negotiations during these meetings if we go into executive session, like before we actually begin negotiating, we could do that. And then once we start, I think that you're right, it would just be, we would have our meeting adjourned and then.
And-
that people start. Right.
And if negotiations was on the night of a regular meeting, you might move the meeting to 5:30, 5:30 to 6.
Mhm.
Have a quick bite to eat or something and then negotiate at 6:30 or
Mhm.
that way you're not killing yourselves and you're balancing it.
Right. Yeah, and we can kind of make adjustments as needed, as long as we're making, make them in time to properly notice, because that's the other thing about this committee switching over from just negotiations to all of this, is that we need to make sure that meetings are properly noticed, posted, and all of that, so. You have a question?
Yeah, I just don't know how to word it.
No.
So when we start negotiations with ed techs, so we'll have our regular meeting, then negotiations, well, are we gonna have more than just, because we have a meeting like every 2 weeks? So we're gonna have this negotiations twice a month or
No. I
human
think
resource
you-
and then negotiations?
You probably still have one meeting, like your regular scheduled meeting. But then if there's an additional negotiation meeting, you wouldn't have this committee.
That's
It
what I
would just be
It would just be the
negotiations.
negotiations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if we find a need to meet twice a month, yep.
One thing that you may want to discuss at the next meeting would be the format of support during negotiations from legal counsel. Ed techs, I don't think you've typically used.
We have
Yeah.
based on the changes that were made statewide to the pay.
Yeah.
That
Did
That
you-
was the only time we brought Campbell in is when we had, and EPL.
I think that they will have the their UNICERF person. As a result of that, I think you may want to consider, even though we didn't use him for admin negotiations, you may want to use him for ed techs. It's a large group. And there's so many new law changes.
Right.
It might be wise to have equal footing. They have a representative. You'd want a representative.
Right, okay.
Rob Olson will not be part of it, it's a new person.
Just don't like to start with it. I feel that it's like, oh, you're expecting,
We did it with teachers.
yeah, but that's different. Intakes are
I
different.
think they're gonna start with it, that's what they said today. I meet with the association on a regular basis, and today they talked about. But again, we can manage it however you would like. I'm just providing guidance.
I don't mind council, especially with all the changes that keep going on.
Yeah.
And
it's
a
hard to
lot.
Keep them straight for sure. All right, anything else? I think we have kind of a handle on what we're gonna do next time and try to think of if there was anything else. Oh, another thing we should probably discuss regarding goals is, as far as the strategic plan is concerned, is how we would want the school board goals to align with check-ins with administration, like what kind of time frame we would want reports from admin on the progress of the strategic plan. We want it, yearly, every quarterly, every month, every day.
Not every day.
But that should
Really?
probably be something that is discussed by this committee, and that we would have to discuss once the strategic plan has been approved, but then we could say like, what kind
Not
of.
like quarterly, because then you can see
Right.
every 3 months or so if there's any progress or what we need to change or what
Right,
needs to be worked on and what's going great, what's not.
right, yeah, what works and what's not, yeah. Anything, Colin? You got anything? Anything, Amy? Good?
I'm good.
All right, so like I said, there's a typo at the end. The next meeting is actually October 19th.
And there's an extra 0 in there.
And there's an extra
Yes.
0.
20.
It's 20. Oh,
There's an extra
20.
0.
Really getting
23.
Oh, I'm telling you. So, all right, we're gonna adjourn, 6:40 PM.